Good morning, everybody. Welcome back to Sandy Bottom Homestead. I'm so glad you're here with me, and I really do hope you're having a fantastic morning. And we're going to talk about something today that I truly believe takes you to another level of gardening, but it does take time. But each time you do it, you're going to get better and better and better. When you look at the garden, a lot of times I get questions of like, how do you grow this so well? And how do you do this and that and the other? And while that's really great to ask questions and do stuff like that and get advice from other people, there's just no other way to learn than by doing it yourself. And so here's the situation. In a video, I don't remember, it was a couple videos ago, I can't remember, I do so many videos and then podcasts, everything kind of runs together. But we were talking about, you know, crops that I wanted to focus on this year. And one of them, especially for the summer season, was corn. And so I'm really gonna like hone in and like focus on my corn and figure out how is best for me to grow corn, not Johnny Bo Peep down the street and Bo Cephas over yonder, but for me to grow corn and what makes me be able to take care of it, and if I like it, and if I get the quantities that I like, and if it's worth the amount of space. And so what I want to do is I just want to kind of go through the garden here a little bit and show you some of the crops that I've done that with over the years. One of them in particular are these taters here. And I brought you over to this tater bed. Sorry about that, I had to pull a weed. I brought you over to this tater bed because I feel like in YouTube world, it's just not getting enough love and it wants more. So we're gonna give it some today. But we were growing potatoes, we've done it a couple years and we enjoy it. But one of the big questions for me, and specifically this plant, was how do I get the amount of harvest that I want to make it worth it? For the potatoes, it was simple, you know, and I start here because it's a pretty easy one. It's, you know, I can get a bag of potatoes for $5. So if I buy seed potatoes, because I didn't have any to save then, and I go to plant them, and I'm gonna get $5, like, is it worth my effort out of them? And also, how much do I consume potatoes? So you can go back to other videos and watch, but just to help you out here, I don't eat a crazy amount of potatoes, our family does not. So what we get out of these two beds is about what we will eat for the whole year. So it worked out perfectly. It gave us enough to go through, and then we were able each year, that's why we run two beds now, because we added one another year, and then now we're figuring out spacing this year. That's what we're working on. So that's for the potatoes, but there's other ones too. I mean, every crop in my garden is, but these are the specific ones that I've done this with. So we're gonna come over to these onions now, and these I've been working on for a few years now, to be honest. I think this is my 4th year, and I don't really talk about that struggle a lot just because it's been, you know, I get a harvest, generally speaking. The one thing that I was having problems with in the very beginning is now these are short day onions, so just keep that in mind as I talk, but they would grow, they would bloom, and I would get nothing. And so I struggled with that, and so I tried again and I tried again, and that was so the first part was like I was planting onion sets, which is basically a 2nd-year onion, which is supposed to bolt. That's the purpose of it, because these are biennials. So I learned that aspect, and then it was the fertilizing and getting it down. And you can see we're starting to get there. You know, we've got some that are bulbing up in here and they're going pretty good. The other aspect of it too was just like the potatoes. Is it worth it for me to grow? You know, you can get onions cheap, you know what I'm saying? But these in particular are Valdalia sweet onions. So they are way more expensive, and they're totally different onions than like your basic cooking onion, you know, that makes you cry and stuff like that. These are really sweet. Anybody from the South knows what these are. But, you know, getting an onion that's a ½ pound, something like that, you know, that's always the goal here. And so learning that if I can plant these onions this tightly and get that amount of onions, like enough to eat, then it actually is well worth because of the variety that I'm growing. So that's why we dedicate a bed every year to that. But it took us probably about 3 tries before we really started to kind of figure out what we were doing here. And that goes with the variety and everything. You know, here in our pepper bed, we've grown peppers ever since I started gardening many years ago. And that's not really the issue. It's not keeping them alive. It's not, you know, feeding them really. It's not any of that. It's the simple fact of getting the harvest that we want and getting the spacing that we want. That may seem kind of weird that we're worried about the spacing, but the spacing does dictate how much of a harvest you get. And so we want to know, like somebody came and bought some bell pepper plants from me the other day, and he was asking me, how many bell peppers am I gonna get off this plant? So, you know, I gave him a roundabout answer. But there's so many different variables of that. It comes down to your spacing, your feeding, your watering, the amount of sun, all that stuff. So that's why we're moving it around different parts of our garden, trying to find a good, happy place for them. Now, I will say, this is the first year, just like my tomatoes, that I have monocropped my peppers. So I'm curious to see how that's gonna work out. And this would be what I would consider my final phase. I don't think that it's all done. You never stop learning, but we're starting to slow down now, and now we're just kind of honing different techniques in, and this is one of them. So monocropping here seems to work well. We've got our spacing down. So we're spacing about roughly a foot per plant. Seems to be pretty good. We're doing a little bit of succession planting, but not much. And then it's just overall health. But these are things that we've worked on for years with these, and different varieties are different. So hot peppers are different than sweet peppers, are different than, you know, big sweet peppers are different than small sweet peppers. Just all that just kind of goes into effect. So these are the things that we're working on throughout our garden. So let's go back to the corn, and let me tell you about the corn and kind of what we witnessed with it and my saga with the corn, so that when we get through this year, you can start to follow along with me. All right, so let me start by saying this. You may not care about corn, but maybe listening, because this is what's like fresh on my mind. And I've got a bee. I just put a box of bees in today. I installed a swarm that we caught, and they are very aggressive right now, which is normal. So if you see me swatting and stuff, that's what it is. But you know, the journey we've taken with corn has been very annoying, let's put it that way. And it was a small step approach, so I didn't really understand a lot about it. And the first year I did it, I read briefly, like, hey, you gotta plant in blocks. So, okay. And I read the spacing, and I was like, okay, so I put it in a block. I put it in about, you know, maybe 2 square feet or something. I grew corn, or grew a plant, but there was nothing there to pollinate it. Then I go back and I say, okay, you got to grow big blocks. So after 2 years of failing like that, you know, and this is a lot of the reason why we started monocropping too, is because we started realizing that like this pollination is an issue, stuff like that. And so the corn just kind of fell right into it. And then we realized like, hey, we need more pollination. So we planted last year, we put in a whole bed of corn. We direct sowed it. Now the problem was I had gotten some topsoil, and it had this weed seed in it, which wasn't a big deal normally. But the problem was the weed that was growing in it looked exactly like corn. So I didn't know what to pull and what to leave. So we ended up having to sow it multiple times to try and get it to grow. And that was our downfall, because what happened was we had it all growing at different sections. So there was no real pollination happening. It was just growing and, you know, not really producing. You get one row that would grow, there wasn't enough pollination happening, there's another one. And I know I can hand pollinate, but I'm not really trying to do that. I do have a method that I am willing to do, but I'm not gonna hand pollinate each one, and there just wasn't enough to do it. That being said, also we had planted them too far apart. So our corn was roughly a foot apart. We need to cut that in half. So we'll get double the amount of corn in a small space. And so hopefully that'll work out well, but that's gonna give us the pollination that requires to grow corn. So let me take you to where we're gonna grow it. Let me just kind of show you. I got these 2 bees, boy. They're killing me. I gotta get out of here before I get stung again. After about 3 or 4 days, they'll calm down. So this is the bed that we're gonna grow it in. Everything will be starting to come out very, very soon. Oh yeah, I forgot to tell you guys, I'm in coastal North Carolina and it's the first 87-degree day. That's right. It's gonna be 87 degrees 3 times this week. It's crazy. So things might get a little bit weird. I don't know if it stays that way. We may have some crop failure, like our potatoes and stuff, but we'll see what goes on. We're just gonna try and manage it the best we can. And the first way I'm gonna do that while I'm talking about it is I'm just gonna spray my sensitive crops down with water in the middle of the day, and that will help cool them. It will not burn holes in your leaves. Carry on. We got all of this going on. We know that these can come out at any time. They're not really a very good size, but they're also not a terrible size. So we're cool with whatever comes out of there, but we can pull them out whenever. And then same here, we're pulling these out slowly but surely. So, you know, within a week or two, we'll be down to probably about 50% of this. We're gonna hook some people up and stuff like that. But the reason why I bring all that up is because we're gonna plant in our rows. And it's the same fashion. We're gonna zigzag it down each row. So every 6 inches, one here, 6 inches, one, you know, 6, 6, 6, 6, all the way down. Not 3 6s, 4 or 5, you know, whatever. And then going down, and then we'll keep it watered heavily. The thing why I moved it to this bed was because I wanted to push the growth. And I wanted all the sun that we can get out of it. Now, all of this is all to say, what I'm challenging you to do is pick a crop that you want to grow this year, put it in the ground, and look at what you did last year. Just like I've just walked around and showed you all of these different places that we're gonna do. And like that has all the different options I made. I've talked about Brussels sprouts enough, so I'm not even gonna get into that. But you know, all the problems I had, and what I did is I sat down and I said, okay, what's wrong with this problem? What's wrong with, you know, the corn? Well, this happened, and this happened. So what can I fix? I can fix this. I can't really do anything about the weed seeds. All I can do is make sure I stay on top of it better. And I can fix this, but I can't fix that, you know, and you start dwindling it down. And what happens if you grow 3 seasons a year, your spring, summer, fall, what happens is you can pick one for each season, and over time, especially the spring and fall, you will get really, really good at growing these crops. And you'll start to just take leaps and bounds to the next one. And you'll be able to solve problems. And you won't be worried about stuff. You won't be worried about, you know, I'm not worried about tomato hornworms. I've seen them, I've treated them enough, and I've focused on that. You know, cabbage moss, stuff like that, aphids, like pests don't really concern me just because we've had our experience with them, but I pay attention to what I do. And when I'm successful, I move on. And that's what you need to do. You need to get successful and you need to move on from it. But once you do that, like hopefully after this year, you know, it's been a couple years, but this is the year I'm really focusing on corn now, just like I really focused on my Brussels sprouts, and we had a great harvest. We were happy with it. We're really gonna focus on it, and we're gonna learn as much as we can about it, and then we're gonna grow it from here on out. No, we might get so good about it, we're gonna have 10 beds of corn next year. Nah, I wouldn't do that. I don't really like corn that much, dang. But yeah, so that's what we're gonna do here. That's what I challenge for you, is pick one, go for it, and just make it the best you can. If you've made it this far and you clearly have made up your mind what you wanna do, go ahead and comment which